What I have for you guys here today is a really fun and strong melee build for Charisse. The reason why we're going to use Charisse is because she starts with a fire axe and provides armor to the team. She also provides 25% trauma resistance for herself and 25% team bolster health. Now, your job with this build is going to be hunting down everything except maybe Reekers or Ogres, because Reekers is going to make a horde if you kill them when you're standing right next to them, and Ogres are going to be pretty hard to deal with a melee weapon, but you still can do it if you find like a cliff or whatever, or like something to stand on. So, the first card we have is going to be Heavy Hitter. Now, what Heavy Hitter does, it's melee hits always stumble ridden the first time they are hit. This is going to be really useful because that stumble that you get, that you use on the enemy when you hit them, is pretty much all you need to kill them. It's also going to be very useful against snitches because you can stumble them, which you can't do anyway on No Hope. So Heavy Hitter is going to be really useful. Also, it's also going to be really useful to stop attacks. Like maybe if a Crusher is going to grab you, you can hit them at first, and then you'll stumble them, and then you'll just kill them because you have so much DPS. These three cards here, Method, Brazen, and Slugger, are all the three melee cards in the game. When you have all three of them equipped, you have infinite amount of stamina, so you're not gonna have to worry about running out of stamina, and they're also going to increase your attack speed by 90%, which is really nice for your DPS. Now, when we're talking about DPS, we're going to talk about all the ways you have damage. And the first card here is Hyper Focused. The reason why we're having that because we are always going to hit something in the weak spots. You know, if it's if it's not like a Reeker or maybe a Lobber, but a Lobber doesn't have that much health anyway. But a Reeker which doesn't have a weak spot, you don't want to get close to anyway. And a Ogre maybe because you can't reach them. Or maybe if you can't find like something, a container or whatever to stand on, then you can actually hit it in the weak spot. But most of the enemies, pretty much all enemies you face, you're going to be able to hit in the weak spot. So that's why we're going to have a lot of weak spot cards in this game. Well, I'll say a lot, but it's two. But it's 50% from hyper focused and it's 30% weak spot damage from Killer Instinct. And it's the downside is it disables your aim downsides, but we already lost that from Method, so it doesn't matter. It's basically a free 30% weak spot damage. We're also going to have Glass Cannon. It says plus 25% damage, and that is for everything. It's accessories, melee, it's guns, bullet damage. Since this game, that's how it works. When you have different damage categories, they go ahead and multiply with each other. It actually works really, really well because it's in its own category. So yeah, it's instead of just adding, it multiplies with the other damage categories. So that's really nice. I wouldn't be too worried about that. You see, minus 30% health. It's not really a big deal because you find a lot of cards on No Hope. You can just buy more hit points. You have opportunity to buy hit points every time in the shop for every level. So I wouldn't be worried at all by that minus 30% health. It's no worries. Another damage card we have here is Mean Drunk, plus 40% melee damage. That is really nice. It also says that your melee attacks cause cleave to enemies dealing damage in a large area. That is very useful because if you haven't seen it already, we're going to be using the combat knife, which I'm going to explain a little bit more about later. But I'd say it helps you having Mean Drunk. It helps so that your combat knife cleaves a little bit, or more, I should say. Another damage card we have in this deck is Ignore the Pain, which does 20% plus melee damage against mutations. Also, something very cool is that when you deal damage to a mutation, you heal 2 health and recover 3 stamina. We don't care too much about the 3 stamina because we already have infinite amount of stamina with these 3 melee cards. And the last card we have here for damage is Spiky Bits, plus 15 melee damage. I wouldn't say so much. I wouldn't say that we use spiky bits that much for the melee damage, although it is very nice. 15 flat melee damage. It's not percent, it's flat, and that is actually, I'd say, really useful. The reason why we're using spiky bits is mainly because you see it also provides plus 20% damage resistance while using a melee damage. And that is the highest damage resisting card you can have in this game. Although it's one more. There's another card that provides even more, but this one provides 20% damage resistance all the time. But you have to use a melee weapon, of course, and you're always going to be using your fire axe. You're never going to be switching. You're pretty much never going to be switching to your uh, maybe your SMG or whatever you're going to be using. So you're always going to be having your fire axe out, even if you maybe are going to use your combat knife. So you're always going to be having that 20% damage resistance. Now, we've talked about damage in this deck. We're going to be talking about sustainability. We don't have that much sustainability because we're going to be playing on No Hope, and if we're going to play on No Hope, we need a lot of damage. So the reason why I don't have that much sustainability is because if I need more, if I going to implement more sustainability in the deck, we're going to have to take from something, and it's probably going to be from DPS, and we need all this DPS because things are really tough in No Hope. But the sustainability we have is Battle Lust, which is going to increase our health by 1 and 0.125 trauma every time we kill something with a melee weapon. We're also going to be having Face Your Fears, which heal 1 temporary health. And we're going to be having EMT Bag, because that makes Battle Lust and Face Your Fears 50% more efficient. Also, it increases the amount of trauma you heal, not just the health. So that is really nice. You're going to find that if you position yourself well and don't take too much damage, you're actually going to be healing a lot of trauma damage that you take. So that is really cool. Also, something very nice is if you like use maybe pain meds or whatever, anything, you use a medical accessory, you also get 50% healing efficiency on that. Of course, it's not only about these two cards here. I like to use like maybe painkillers, pain meds, whatever you call them, and I just take them, and they are 50% more effective. Maybe I take damage from something that I didn't anticipate or I didn't prepare for, and I just take pain meds, and I'm back in the game. Now we're going to be talking about the combat knife, because some of you might not really like the idea of having a combat knife in your deck, because a lot of people find it really bad. But the good thing about it is you hit really fast. You don't have to use your fire axe. You can just use the combat knife which hits faster than your fire axe, and it also cleaves a little bit. And Mean Drunk makes it so that it cleaves even more. Also, you necessarily don't have to hit targets from above, which you must do with the fire axe. The combat knives hits, you can aim where you're stabbing or whatever, and that makes it so you don't need to hit volatile ridden in the head, which deals a lot of damage. So this way you can avoid that. Also, something very important is that if you don't use the combat knife, you're going to be using your fists, and you have that flat 15 melee damage, which makes it so that you can 2-hit every ridden. However, when the ridden becomes monstrous, you need to 3-hit them. And from my experience when playing, that's very annoying, and you're not really going to be dealing with the common ridden that efficiently if you're going to be using your fists. Also, if you come across like festering ridden, they take a lot more hits. If you have the combat knife, you can just 1-hit them in the head, and if they're ferocious or monstrous, you can 2-hit them in the body. Also, if you come across military or police ridden, they're very annoying to deal with if you don't have the combat knife. You can deal with them with the fire axe, but you can deal with them with the fire axe, but it's annoying if there are volatiles around. You're probably going to risk hitting volatiles as well. So I would recommend using the combat knife, because then you can just 2-hit them in the head. First one time to knock off the helmet, and then you kill them 1 hit with the combat knife. I'm definitely recommending the combat knife. And the last card we're going to be using is Copper Scavenger. The reason why I've chosen this copper card is because I think it's the best one in the game if you don't want to exploit some bugs. What is so great about Copper Scavenger is, first of all, it spawns more copper piles. Now it spawns 250 copper piles, so that is 100 copper for each person, and since you're 4 players on the team, that means you gain 400 copper per level. So that is really good, that is awesome. And The other really good thing about this card is that you can sense nearby coppers, so that way you can be really fast when you're playing through a level. Maybe you have to save some time or whatever you want to play fast. You can just walk into a room and then you can sense if there's any copper nearby, or that helps you play really fast. You don't have to go and look maybe in some corners here and there. You can just sense them near you, and that is really, really useful in my opinion. Now this build isn't all be all or end all. You can go ahead and rearrange it however you like. I would recommend, if you want to change it up, maybe you can actually, if you want to, you can try to remove the combat knife. I think it's really, really good. I definitely love it. But if you want to remove the combat knife, you can take it away and maybe you can add something else. You can maybe add like well rested, because it gives you 20% team overheal and a little bit of extra team healing efficiency. This is really good because overheal works with battle lust, and I think I'm pretty sure it also works with face your fears, if I'm not mistaken. So that way you're going to be gaining even more temporary health, which is really nice. I would recommend maybe money grubbers, because copper scavenger and money grubbers synergizes really well together. Or if you want to have, maybe maybe you would like maybe you would like down in front, because you don't want to be taking or dealing friendly fire damage, because that fire axe can deal a lot of friendly fire. Also, one more thing to mention is the combat knife doesn't deal any friendly fire damage. Cards I would recommend is maybe also, if you find the level, maybe any card that have damage resistance, like motorcycle helmets or maybe padded suit or whatever, anything that gives more damage resistance. I would definitely recommend, because you're going to be dealing with commons as well. With this deck, you can deal with commons. It's not like you can't, but it's better at dealing with mutations. It's more, that's what it prioritizes. You can deal with commons, but you need to work on positioning yourself well, so that you can't just run out in the middle of field and whatever, just tank everything that comes at you. You need to be positioning yourself well. If you don't do that, then I'm sorry to say that you're probably going to die. Now we're also going to talk about what kind of attachment you're going to be using. Which three I recommend are the ones you see here on screen. It's so that you gain more damage resistance and you hit faster and you deal more damage. The reason why I am recommending these three is because they complement your deck very well. More damage resistance is nice for everything, dealing with commons, since you don't have that much damage resistance anyway. It's really nice. And any other card I would recommend is anything that deals more weak spot damage or even more damage. But yeah, hopefully I haven't forgotten to mention anything. I think this is a really fun and awesome deck. It makes the game super fun. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.